For those of you who don't know what a shadow senator does, D.C. residents get to vote for me when they go to the polls, and then I go to the Senate, and then I don't get to vote for you. Which is a very, very solemn responsibility. But I want you to know that if there's an important federal issue that you want me to not vote on, just let me know which way you want me to not vote. If I can, I'm going to try and not vote your way.
We're going to ask all of our guests this at the end. How would you like to die? Less than a minute left. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cantrell, and we're really excited to get this thing started. Our podcast focuses on a person's life. We see where they began, what they've done, and where they'd like to go, and also how they'd like to go. Joining me is my co-host, Jamie McCacken. How are you, Jamie?
I'm good. How are you, Charlie?
Good. And for this episode, we've got a great guest. They are the current shadow senator from D.C. They've also been active in the comedy group called the Washington Roast, which performs at the D.C. Improv, where I was an intern and met there. Please welcome D.C. Shadow Senator Paul Strauss. Thank you for being with us, Paul.
Great to be with you, Charlie. Jamie, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Great having you.
Now, we know that you were at the White House Correspondents Dinner, where Trump had the assassination attempt. Just want to say glad you and everyone there that night is safe. And it was wondering if you could share what that night was like.
Well, it started off like most other dinners. We're all dressed up. We got our nice tuxes on. I hadn't really eaten a lot because I wanted to fit into the tux, so I was kind of looking forward to the dinner. And I saw my old professor and good friend and personal hero, Congressman Jamie Raskin. He was walking by our table and over to the Boston Globe table. So I wanted to congratulate him. He had spoken to the DC Democratic Party the night before. He was a keynote speaker, gave a great speech. And literally, I was just a few words into the conversation with him when we heard somebody, presumably Secret Service, yell, "Shots fired. Get down, get down, get down." And, they say, man, you learn what kind of man you are in an event like that, a situation. And I learned I'm the kind of man that quickly dives under the table and hides. And we were actually next to Kerry Kennedy, Jackie Kucinich, who I remember from her days as an AU journalism student in Washington, and so we're all sort of huddled under there. One of DC's big media consultants, a guy named Richard Strauss, so we have two guys with the same last name.
No relation?
No relation,
Okay.
just bonded together by the shared experience of lying on a ballroom floor, being overdressed in a scary situation. Thankfully, everybody was fine, and we were captured in what's become kind of an iconic picture. And so there's a very successful White House photographer who shot the picture when probably he should have been ducking as well. But these photojournalists are a different breed. And in fact, it even ran today. If you're in New York, pick up today's New York Post, because they actually have that same picture again in today's New York Post. So it has become kind of the iconic photo of that moment. And there I am lying on the floor. So you had told me that probably the most widely circulated photo of me ever in news organizations would be me lying down on a floor. I guess I could have believed it, but I just figured it might have been for something else. Normally you can drink me under the table, but to get me to just dive there voluntarily,
How did it, what was going through your mind, do you think, at the moment that that photo was taken?
Um, I didn't realize when the photo was being taken. I was just trying to focus on what was happening. Hopefully everybody's okay. We were certainly, uh, Congressman Raskin was actually kind of shielding and protecting Kerry Kennedy. And I was kind of, her father was tragically murdered in a hotel ballroom, not unlike the one we were in. And so I think we were all kind of worried about her just a little bit beyond what may be happening. There were some other journalists, a young woman from Sinclair Broadcasting who was at our table who this was her first dinner. She was excited and different people handled it in different ways, but she was very upset. And Ms. Kennedy was trying to kind of calm her. So we were all sort of trying to look out for each other. And I had left my cell phones on the table. So when I finally got them, there were all these texts, and that picture had already been snapped, somehow developed. This is in the space of minutes, and was now CNN had it. And if you look at the picture, you could see uh, it because of the way I'm lying, it looks like I could have been injured. And Jackie Kucinich from the Boston Globe was sort of propping herself on her hands, and it could have looked like she might have been performing CPR or something on me. So people who knew me, who knew I was at the dinner, or who was watching it live, because it's covered on C-SPAN, it's covered, to some extent on CNN, the other news networks, all saw this unfolding in real time. And so I just was really trying to let people know that I was okay. And then it just kept hitting. Well, wow, the USA Today has it, and this and that, and then it was BBC. So um, there we are, basically going viral. And um, at first, you could get up, but they didn't want anyone in to leave, which I get because we were all technically material witnesses to a fairly serious crime.
Right.
And then they were like, no, everybody out, everybody out. So we left the premises, and the truth is, um, we're like, well, now what do we do? Because we're supposed to get lobster, and uh, by the end of the night, we were getting hungry. And there were all these after events, and we weren't sure whether they would be going forward. Most of them did, which was good because, you know, at some point, it was helpful to see people reassure each other. And
Yeah,
That's
I'm
great.
so glad to hear that everyone was safe. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. And do you think that the threat was taken seriously? Because I saw videos of a man continuing to eat while people were on the floor, and then one woman was stealing wine.
well, stealing's a strong word. I mean, I know the White House Correspondents Associations had strong words for those people. They were saying it was $74 a bottle and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot that's coming out. Um, I did meet the guy who kept eating the salad. And he was explaining that he had kind of a bad back, and he was worried about being able to get up. And it was. I did actually get the salad. It was a good salad. It was a fresh burrata with fresh snap peas. And I think it's interesting because that guy has sort of single-handedly changed the image of it used to be you call some guy a salad eater, you may have been impugning his masculinity in some way. And he has basically made being a salad eater macho again. And so I think for those cultural reasons, he will also be one of the icons. So you've got the salad eaters. Some people grab the wine. Um, I was just sort of laying down on the floor and keeping my head down, like most folks. And the journalists were reporting. Um, and it was interesting because you saw really two types of journalists. You had sort of the traditional journalists that were um, pointing the camera at the live action, and then you had kind of the younger more influencer types, and they were pointing the cameras at themselves. So quite a interesting contrast between the traditional journalist and the influencer types as to what they were, which way they were holding the phone.
Do you
So
have a
normally you can't always tell them apart, but if you were holding it this way or that way, what can I tell you?
Do you have a preference between the two?
Um, I I mean I was not a journalism student, but I always taught that if you're trying to break news, you would point the camera at the news. But uh, I guess some folks have a high opinion of themselves or want to be in the story. So I don't know. Um, I this was my first um, uh, mass shooting attempt, so we didn't really know what was happening.
uh, Mr. Strauss, do you go by Mr. Strauss or Mr. Senator Strauss, or do you Mr. Shadow Senator Strauss?
Very few people call me Shadow Senator. The Shadow is kind of a nickname. The
Okay,
official title is U.S. Senator for the District of Columbia. Shadow is a term that originated in the British Parliament to refer to um, it's like in waiting portion of the position. So in the British opposition, there's a shadow foreign secretary, shadow chancellor of the exchequer. Um, Tennessee elected shadow senators in 1796, California, Michigan. It's not a new position in American history, but it's a unique one. I think still, because you're not allowed to vote, you don't have the powers. But when people use the title, it's usually just senator or Paul, or we can be
sure.
um, informal here.
And okay, well, I'll just call you Paul. Thank you. And what is a shadow senator of D.C.? Can you talk about what that role is?
It's something where DC residents go to the polls, as they will this election season, and they'll get a chance to vote for me, and then I go to the Congress and I don't get a chance to vote for them because DC is not a state. It's part of the efforts of the people of Washington, D.C. to be a state. It's modeled after what Tennessee did because Tennessee got tired of trying to be invited to be a state, so they declared themselves to be a state, elected senators, sent the senators to Washington who showed up at the Capitol and basically occupied two seats in the Senate until Tennessee was officially admitted. And as the slave territories blocked the admission of new free territories into becoming states, they too elected shadow senators in advance of becoming a state formally to help move statehood along. Alaska used this practice in 1956 before they were admitted in 1959. And DC began with Jesse Jackson, who was elected in 1990. And I have actually had that same seat since Reverend Jackson gave it up in 1996 and have hung on to it somewhat tenaciously until we can actually make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. And Puerto Rico has elected shadow senators as part of their statehood effort. We always figured there would be um, maybe a healthy competition between us and Puerto Rico, who would be 51. Uh, Now, people are talking about putting Greenland and Canada in the mix. Didn't really see that one coming when I first started out, but we're serious about statehood for DC, and I hope one day we'll be able to get it. I'm going to continue in this role if the voters want. They can fire me. I'm not going to quit on them, but they're going to get a say in November. And but if they'll continue to have me, I'll continue to work on their behalf and try and do what I can to finally make this happen.
I met you, Mr. Strauss, at the Washington roast. I was an intern there. For
Yeah.
those who don't know, it's a bipartisan political bashing where they have comedians go up, they impersonate politicians, and the audience votes on who did the best impersonation. You went there. Can you talk? How did you come to meet the Washington roast?
I was invited by Tim Kardashian, who asked me to just come to one of the shows. And then he asked me if I'd like to just say a few words. And so, they handed me the mic, and there you are in the big room at the Improv. So I just started introducing myself and thanking people for going out and coming downtown. I mean, we still have, even this many years after the pandemic, DC is still struggling to fill its downtown spaces again. So I was just happy to celebrate it. And then people just sort of started laughing. So I tried to keep up and get in the spirit. You have all of these comedians impersonating politicians, and here I am just being the actual politician. So it just seemed kind of like a good metaphor for, you know, we're so disenfranchised in DC that I can't even get impersonated by a comedian. I have to actually just come up there and make fun of myself. People seem to enjoy it, and I had fun, and it's kind of therapeutic. And so I look forward to going back when they're in DC. They travel around the country. They've even been to New York, and you get to learn a lot of things. Like I didn't even know comedians had interns. So
Yeah.
who knew?
The pay, it was the pay. It was just for the pay. It was so much more. But you were very good. You were very funny. Honestly, it was actually you did a good routine. Is that a routine you had rehearsed previously?
Not so much. We're trying to polish it and
Okay.
and come up with new material, but it's awkward because it's such a challenging environment because there's a lot of things that are just happening that are not funny. And so I tried this bit, because we're kind of under occupation with the National Guard, and people are really stressed out about it. And I did this bit about, like, you know, whether you're supposed to tip the National Guard, and if so, how much, and because it could be kind of awkward. And but then one of the port guards people get shot, and then you also have instances where people are and I don't want to single out the guard because they're not really the perpetrators, but we have these horrible ICE agents that have been brutalizing the community. And so you never know whether you're um, making light of a tense situation in a positive therapeutic way where we could bring people together and laugh about it, or uh, you know is it too soon with the shooting and the other stuff. So I real comedians struggle with these issues. I'm just kind of trying to wing it, but I like comedy. Growing up in New York, I would go to comedy clubs. I mean, that was something you would do, and I would go a lot as a high school student because they were notorious about not being particularly strict about checking IDs or anything like that. And so we would come because they would let us drink, but you'd get to see some of these great comedians. So I enjoyed comedy clubs. We don't have as many in DC as you do in New York, but it's fun. It is therapeutic, and I think it's a good way of being expressive. And in fact, we've had comedians that we've recruited for our statehood campaign. Dave Chappelle, who's actually someone I consider a good friend, did a public service announcement uh, for us about DC statehood, and we've met a lot of other so-called celebrities as part of our 51 Stars campaign, where we get kind of Hollywood style stars to help us with our goal of getting 51 stars on the American flag. So cute play on words, but it's a way of recruiting some of these public figures. Wendy McClendon, Cubby from lots of TV shows, some great movies. Funny Lady also did one of them. So I think there's a role for comedy and a need for comedy in our political discourse. Um, Comedy's always been political, whether it's Lenny Bruce or one of my favorites growing up, George Carlin. And so if we can use it in the right way, there's a lot of very heavy stuff going that we should learn to laugh about if it helps lighten the mood and bring people together and spark some joy in some difficult times. Well, then sure, I don't. I'm happy to be a part of it. I think it can play a real role in elevating people's spirits in these dark times.
Right. I love that you say that about the role that humor and comedy can play in politics. I'm curious about how you feel on a sense of, is it a productive thing to make fun of yourself, to as a politician, to be able to make fun of yourself and have a sense of humor, and is it productive to make fun of the other side in a comedic way?
I think satire has always been an important part of how we perceive government in power, whether it's the medieval version of the court gesture or Mark Twain, um, who would brutally lampoon the members of Congress of his time. And so, sure, they go hand in hand. And I do think it helps. I do think it's um, important. These correspondence dinners typically feature both a comedian and the president of the United States trying to make lighthearted jokes and satire. So the answer is absolutely. It's been part of the tradition. It goes hand in hand. I think it is healthy because you have so much pomposity and circumstance, pomp and all that. So if we can all take ourselves down a few pegs, I think it's healthy. I think, people like to laugh. It's part of who we are as organic living beings. It's um, the root of funny is fun, and we need fun. And yeah, a lot of horrible things, war, economic collapse. I mean, if we can really find a way to bring people out of that depression, out of that funk, and uh, spark some happiness and joy, yeah, we should be doing that.
You talked about Chappelle. That's pretty neat. How do you know Chappelle? And also, if you could ever put in a good word with me with him, that'd be much appreciated.
So Dave came up through the local clubs, the Improv. He was a DC public school graduate from the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and really cared about the community. Spent a lot of time there. We had and I would go to the shows because one of the things when I got to Washington is you would try and find New York kind of things to do in the city. They're different cities, but. And so I would go to comedy clubs, and the Improv is sort of one of the oldest and more established ones in DC. And we had lost touch, but when he had come back, because they were putting his picture on the wall at Ben's Chili Bowl, um, replacing another comedian that is no longer on the wall for a variety of
Is
reasons.
it Cosby by chance? Is that the guy?
I forget, but we talked and we had some mutual friends in common, and I was explaining it, and then I, of course, pitched the DC statehood thing, and he's a big supporter of that. And then Dave decided to donate his Emmy to his old public high school. And I had a chance to go with him there and to be on stage with Dave Chappelle when he gave his Emmy. And um, it's this great picture. And if you don't know, the actual story behind it, it looks like, here I am, me and Dave getting an Emmy, but he gave it to the school. Um, so he cares deeply about DC. His mom still lives in the area. Um, and whenever he comes back, we try and get together. So, not saying I agree with him on everything, and there's probably some areas where we disagree fundamentally. But on DC statehood, my biggest issue and him being a DC native, his heart's in the right place, and I appreciate having his support in this fight.
You talked about Carlin, uh,
Yeah.
and being your favorite comic. What about Carlin? I love Carlin as well. What is your favorite part of Carlin?
Oh, I think it evolved. I mean, as a kid, you hear him and he's talking about all the dirty words, and so you're excited about that. Then, when you're in high school and you start smoking weed, he's talking about all of that. And then as I got more political, you saw the depth and the breadth of everything that he was talking about. And so um, I think the most impressive thing about George Carlin was how he stayed contemporaneous and relevant through some very, very changing times. And so, um, the guy that used to wear a suit and tie on the Tonight Show, who ended up becoming so much part of the counterculture that he really began to define the culture itself. Um, and never gave anyone a free pass and was always calling out hypocrisy where he saw it. And look, if you look at our system, you're going to see a lot of hypocrisy. And so to take all of that and distill it down to so many relevant points. And then, not everything was political. I'm a big baseball fan, and, his whole baseball versus football thing, where they kind of mock baseball a little bit. But um, so, even though he was very political, some of my favorite stuff wasn't necessarily his political things, although I enjoyed it all. So, I mean, I remember seeing him at Town Hall, Carnegie Hall. I mean, he did, he was still doing live performances pretty regularly, and so it was fun to be able to go and see him. Comedy, in my day, it was you would buy the albums, the big round pieces of vinyl that you would play on a record player, because that's how old I am. And so being able to see uh, the guy on the records and be in the room with him was
What's been the highest point of your career so far?
the highest point in my career. I mean, there's a lot of fun you can have in politics, but I'm also a practicing attorney. Um, and even just being an attorney, you get to do some pretty significant things. I was once called upon to be in a case where literally a small baby's life hung in the balance. It was a sudden. DC has these emergency hearings where there's a judge on call 24 hours a day, and if you're a member of the bar, a judge can appoint you to represent someone in a case, whether you wanted to or being paid by them or not. And I got a call from the general counsel of a hospital, a DC General Hospital, and he said that there was a premature infant that was in desperate need of a blood transfusion. And the mother was a Jehovah's Witness and would not consent to the procedure. And so there was going to be an emergency hearing as to whether or not the doctors could perform the medical procedure over the parent's objection. And I had my children were born premature, so I learned a little bit about neonatology and what a baby goes through in a neonatal ICU or a NICU. And so the hospital's lawyer knew about that, recommended me to the judge. The judge called me up. I'm in the middle of dinner and says, I understand you're an expert in neonatology. I'm like, well, I'm hardly that, but I spent some time in a NICU with my daughters. And he's like, well, good enough. That's better than, we've been able to get. We got to be down at DC General Hospital. We're going to convene a hearing in about 45 minutes. And okay, no pressure, just a human life hanging in the balance. But it was a moment where, nothing political about it. I was able to argue a case, and clearly it was important. And so that was sort of um, I guess, my high point as a lawyer. But um, yeah, in this job as senator, I've gotten to meet presidents, presidential candidates, leading officials in the entertainment industry, governors. and I've been at it a while, and that I've been able to watch other people grow up and see how their careers unfold. So, I started as somebody's intern. I've had interns. A lot of my interns have gone on to great careers. One of my interns chairs the county commission in Westchester right now. I have one of my interns won an Academy Award, and I got to help write a few lines of his acceptance speech. So
That's amazing.
um, it's been fun to see how these interns grow up and turn out. So.
Who was the one that won the Academy Award?
His name is Mark Bowl. It was for Hurt Locker. Also did Zero Dark 30 and a couple of other movies. Was a journalist before he became a successful screenwriter. But yeah, for a few months there, he was on my couch and once misplaced a very expensive cell phone at the time. So,
That's pretty cool.
but we did. And I did get to talk to him and I gave him some lines and which he ended up using some of them in his acceptance speech. So
That's cool.
So, in learning a little bit about how a shadow senator, conducts their office, we were curious about if you think, as someone who you're representing your constituents and you're fighting for statehood for DC, but you're also not able to actually represent and participate in the way that a traditional senator would for the rest of the 50 states. Do you feel like there's advantages or you're able to relate to your constituents in a different way as a shadow senator versus being a traditional senator for a state that has a Senate seat?
I think there's a degree of empathy that the constituents have with me um, because maybe if you live in a state, the senator's kind of this aloof, powerful figure who um, you don't isn't really relatable to you. And in fact, it always astonishes me in like Hollywood movies how often the senator is always the villain. The Hollywood senators always seem to have powers that even the voting senators don't have, like control of these clandestine special ops forces. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, that's just nothing I've ever seen in my experience. And I think a lot of them understand that I'm not like that, and that I don't have that power. Um, so there's some empathy and some bonding, and that we're all in it together. But no, it's frustrating, and it's so painful when people come to you with these real problems that you wish you could help them with in a ways that maybe other senators can. But we've had so many federal employees losing jobs, in this administration because of the Doge cuts. And you wish you could help find jobs for these people because that seems to be a thing that people expect senators to be able to do or um, intervene in these in various proceedings in a way that I can't. So I think that over time, people have gotten to know me. I've become one of DC's longest serving officials in the local District of Columbia area. Now, by U.S. Senate standards, I've been there 30 years, so that still makes me kind of a green baby. And even in my 60s, I'm like one of the young spry ones. So
Mm.
it's a very interesting place, the U.S. Senate. But um, I, I hope my constituents appreciate what we're trying to do. I think most of them do. My numbers are good, and we'll see. Um, Odds are I'm expecting to be back there a year from now. So
That's great.
we'll see what happens. Don't want to jinx it. And
Right.
DC is a pretty democratic city, so but. There'll be a Republican on the ballot. There'll be people from the statehood Green Party. People can run as independents. You can run as write-ins. So I don't want to, um, take anything for granted. We're going to campaign for every vote, and if I get them, I'll feel like I've earned them.
Uh,
Wonderful.
that's great. And wanted to ask you about, what does it feel like to lose an election? I know you've won and lost. What does it feel like to have won an election and to lost? Is it very different, I assume?
I think it's bad. It feels winning elections is more fun than losing elections. I have approached this year with some anxiety because it was such sort of an anti-incumbent year, and there's a lot for people to be mad about. And I was worried about losing this one. Uh, the elections I've lost have been elections for seats that I didn't have, and so there was one where I ran for an open seat on the council, and there was like seven people running, and I came in second. Everybody else was in like single digits. I got 15% of the vote. The ultimate winner got obviously more than that. But so, it wasn't a humiliating blowout, but it's not the Olympics. They don't give you a silver medal or anything. You're in or you're not. Um, but uh, it it um, it hasn't happened that much. So we'll see if I lose one in the future, I'll come back and let you know. But
Hmm.
it doesn't look fun. Probably won't be fun. It's not. Um, I'm also fairly strategic about what I run for. There's a lot of folks that are like, "Hey, put their name on the ballot lots of different times." I take the process a little bit more seriously. It takes a lot out of you. It's very expensive to do it. I mean, particularly if you're in a job like I do, where you make your money by billing people by the hour, and then you're doing all this stuff where you're not billing anybody anything. And so you need to be. I try and be strategic and um, not. I like to convince myself that I'm the best candidate in the race, and that's my first threshold. And if there's others, people who are smarter or better, adapt, or they're at a point in their life where they can do it. Um, the younger version of me was um, maybe less cautious, and so I approach it more strategically now.
Um, we're curious about both for you personally as Paul Strauss, but also as a senator for representing your constituents. How would you like your legacy to be remembered?
Well, I want to succeed in the mission of getting DC statehood. So the people from Tennessee got statehood, California, Michigan, Minnesota, Alaska. And so I'm kind of haunted by this weight of history that I might be the first guy to not pull it off for their jurisdiction. So if we can get that done, that would be it. I've helped make the District of Columbia a state. We've put 51 stars on the flag, and that would be a great legacy. Um, if and I'm going to continue with that until we can get it done.
Our podcast, we always ask the same questions to everyone. We we interview people who are living their lives to the fullest. So, Mr. Shadow Senator Paul Strauss of D.C., how would you like to die?
Um, well, not on a ballroom floor, as I found out. Um, I not for a while, and I would assume free of pain and with some reasonable, deliberate speed. But I don't know. That's something to ponder.
That's great. Thank you for being here, Mr. Strauss. Appreciate your
All right.
time.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good one.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.